Want to know where this Russia probe is going? Take a look at where stocks are heading. Up. The Dow ending the week at a record high, even with former FBI Director James Comey's testimony. So is the smart money telling us not to worry about Washington? Hi, everybody. I'm Dagen McDowell. This is Bulls and Bears. The Bulls and Bears this week: Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, John Layfield, along with Emily Jashinsky and Jessica Tarlov. Welcome to everybody. Gary B., is Wall Street telling Main Street there's no there?
Absolutely. Look, at this point, I am surprised that Jessica has any hair. She's probably pulling it out. She thought the markets would collapse. The rivers would overflow.
I did just cut it a lot, though.
The icebergs would melt, and none of that has happened. Look what happens during these presidential scandals. During the Clinton-Lewinsky thing, the market went up. It went down during the Nixon impeachment brouhaha, but that was because everyone thought the entire democracy was on the cusp. Now people realize, yes, Trump may have been naive. Yes, maybe he thought he was dealing with someone that couldn't handle his backslapping and stuff like that. He underestimated Comey. But even if the very worst happened, the very, very worst, and there's a 0.001% chance, and Trump got impeached, you know what the market would say? Okay, fine, we got Pence. We still got Congress. Life moves on. This is a big nothing burger out there, as much as the liberals want it to be. That's why the market has responded positively.
John, I also look at the Russell 2000, a gauge of much smaller companies, also hitting an all-time high on Friday. And if you look at a gauge of volatility or how much people are nervous, it's at a 10.5-year low.
Yeah, look, Gary B. is right. This is a non-event. I went through the last almost 400 years, 394 years to be exact, from the 1623 crash after the 30-year war to today of stock market crashes, bear markets, and also economy crashes. And there were one of three things. It was either some type of economic event like a default, it was a bubble bursting, or it was some type of invasion or attack that later a war followed. Then I went through the presidential scandals, the big ones, not the Warren G. Harding losing the White House China in a poker game, but the presidents being impeached, like Andrew Johnson was impeached. During that time, the market stalled for only a short time. It was up 6% in the following months. The same thing happened when President Clinton was impeached. The same thing happened during Iran-Contra. The Watergate scandal really had nothing to do with President Nixon as far as the economy that it had to do with the Arab oil embargo. So this really is a non-event. Presidential scandals have traditionally and historically had no effect on the market.
Emily, is the market indeed telling the rest of the country, don't worry about what's happening in Washington with this investigation?
Yeah, it is. And what investors care about is the Trump economic agenda. And unless something comes out of the Russia investigation that's going to hamper Trump's economic agenda, then, really it doesn't matter as far as the markets are concerned. I mean, really what's going to impact that more so than the Russia investigation is divisions within the Republican Party. That's what investors should really be wary of right now. The Russia investigation, we just keep hearing things drip, drip, drip that already confirm the existing narrative. Nothing is game-changing. That's what we saw this week. That's what we'll continue to see with the markets.
Well, Jonas, you did see also the NASDAQ hitting an all-time high early on Friday, but then you saw kind of the bottom fall out in some of these really top performers. Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google's parent, Apple, and Microsoft were all really weak. Is that a sign of things to come potentially?
It's a sign that they all blew through $1,000 a share mostly recently, and I think that's really the story. Is I think the stock market has kind of transcended the Trump bump, so to say, and it definitely was driven by that early on, the optimism about tax policy changes, regulatory changes, which we've seen some of, and not getting potentially more tax increases if Clinton won, which was the expectation. But somewhere around March, I honestly think the market thinks Trump's in a slump and is not going to pass any of this stuff anytime soon, and doesn't care any more than the late 90s market, which, as if you recall, was extremely hot, would care about Clinton policy that may or may not have happened because of the scandal he was involved in. It just became its own momentum-driven situation where investors are in and could all of a sudden decide to get out, but it's not going to have anything to do with this other scandal, which I don't want to downplay the sensationalism of it, but I just think the market is beyond it right now. At the end of the day, does it seem Nixonian? We had a lot of problems in the economy we don't have now, about inflation, oil, right, et cetera. And it doesn't have the corruptness of, it seems more like Trump treats Comey like he was the head of security at Trump Tower. That was his basic mistake. And that's not how he's not a politician. He's not like Nixon, and he doesn't understand how things work at his age in government, and it will lead to problems, and it could stop the policies from happening, and that is going to play a weight. But again, I think it doesn't matter anymore.
But Jessica, if you look at the stock market as a gauge of concern, there was none.
No, certainly not this week. We have seen some ups and downs, but certainly there was that Trump bump, and there was that little bump right when it looked like Hillary was going to win, and that was the Hillary stabilization factor. But special shout out to John there with that incredible research. You totally put me to shame, and I usually come to play here. And all I wanted to add to that is to say that from what I looked at, that yes, these political scandals are historically overblown, and that basically people just want to write articles saying like, look at this volatility, and then the next day they say, look, we've stabilized because of X, Y issue. And to Emily's point, I completely agree that if the Trump agenda is able to advance, and it is Republicans that are standing in the way right now for that, certainly now that they're discussing doing tax reform and health care together, which I think is a complete impossibility, we probably should be able to stay pretty stable, which I think is a great thing, certainly as I think as well that this Russia thing is not a nothing burger, as Gary pointed out in his opening statement.
But Gary B., to challenge Jessica over here, the Dow's up, 16% since Election Day. That's not just a little bump. And a lot is going on down in Washington, even outside of what Congress is doing in terms of trying to make it easier to do business. Rolling back of regulations, I point to that. The energy business. Dodd-Frank rollback. The House passed that just this past week, even in the middle of this Comey nonsense.
My gosh, you're right. There is still a lot of good things to come. I feel bad for Jessica, honestly. I feel like her spirit has been broken. She wants to come to the side of light. Look, I feel badly for her. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, these nothing burgers, and they are nothing burgers, here's what I did during the Comey testimony. I watched a little bit. Then I went to my computer and I ordered stuff from Amazon. That night, I fired up Netflix and watched something silly. People say, yes, it's in the background, but then they go about their daily lives. Nothing is going to come of this, I almost can guarantee, other than Comey is going to look sillier and sillier like the New York Times. And people are going to go back to businesses. Amazon eventually is going to go up, just like Netflix and Facebook and all those other things. I think this is very, very positive for the market right now.
But, Gary, can I just quickly jump in, not about my happiness and my spirit, but just ask you, I mean, if the Republicans are not able to pass tax reform, what will happen then? I mean, that was the major Trump promise here. That's what he got elected for.
I'll answer that very quickly. Then we basically have, as bad as it was, we have the Obama years. If nothing happens, the Obama years. During the Obama administration, the market was up 125%. I'll take that.
Yeah. Here's what we do know. The taxes won't go up, and that we won't double the debt.
Exactly.
That's what we do know.
Might get some more debt.
John, I want to give you final word on this, but one of my concerns is that the likes of Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, that he tries to talk down this economy. He's talking about the chaos that the Trump administration is creating for consumers, that these CEOs with an agenda will try and, hurt the way people feel.
Mr. Schultz needs to go and visit one of his stores and actually see his consumers. I think he's actually lost touch. He's been in too many board meetings. He's been a wonderful founder and a CEO of that company, but he's not in touch with the consumer out there because they don't care about all these scandals. They don't care about all this conspiracy theories in Washington, D.C. They've seen it and they've heard it, and it's too much. Look at the Theresa May election over the UK. The reason they're voting out incumbents is because America and the world is fed up with the political parties, and so that doesn't really matter. What matters most right now is getting some type of regulation reform. You mentioned the Clinton economy, the 96 Small Business Act. That had a lot to do with the economy. That's the one good thing that the Trump administration is doing right now.
Gary B., final word to you. Are you concerned, though, with talk on later in the late this week about tapes of these Comey conversations?
I am not. Look, I think we've heard a lot of things back and forth. There probably is tapes. I don't think Trump, I mean, as naive as he is and as bumbling as he can be sometimes, I don't think there's anything incriminating on it. But even if there is, like I said, okay, then Trump's impeached, Pence is president, we all go back to normal. It'll be a little bit rocky. I don't think there's anything there, though. I hope not.
That's not just glass half full. That's glass all the way full.
Yeah, spilling over
a level and spilling over onto the table. Thank you, guys.
All true.
Thank you, guys and gals. Cavuto on Business about 20 minutes from now. Neil, what have you got?
Hey, Dagan, what do Comey and this contractor have in common? Well, someone here says that is what taxpayers should really care about. And if the president wants tax cuts, is there one thing he needs to cut out? We'll see it at the bottom of the hour.
Thank you, Neil. We can't wait. But up here first, terrorists caught casing New York airports for potential targets. Time to spend whatever it takes to protect all of those summer flyers.
Good Saturday morning to you. I'm Leland Vittert, live from America's News headquarters in Washington. As we speak, dozens of protests planned nationwide against Islamic law. Live look right now in New York City as protesters are gearing up there. The controversial group Act for America says they are speaking out against human rights violations they believe are committed under Sharia law. Critics call the demonstrations anti-Muslim and plan counter-protests. President Trump volunteering to testify under oath about his conversations with fired FBI Director James Comey. The president accusing Comey of lying to Congress in his testimony on Capitol Hill Thursday. President Trump also saying there would be information on possible tapes of their private conversations soon. Back to New York, if news breaks there, some of these other protests around the country. Meantime, I'm Leland Vittert. Now back to Bulls and Bears.
New details just coming out on two terror suspects taken down. Both men Hezbollah operatives, both given U.S. citizenship, and both received weapons and bomb-making training in Lebanon. So what were they doing here? Casing New York City airports for a potential attack. John, you say this should be a wake-up call to ramp up our security spending at airports.
It certainly should. I fly every single week, sometimes up to 4 days a week, and I see incredible inconsistencies in TSA throughout our country. And you look at how many times TSA fails security checks. There's absolutely no excuse for this whatsoever. The government also takes about $1.25 billion of TSA security fees that all airline passengers pay in and put into the general fund. That is also inexcusable. The TSA should be privatized. You should take the billion flights that you have per year. It's a $7.6 billion budget with TSA, and simply just add on per flight what you need to fund the TSA, fund it securely, put a merit-based system in place, and if guys are screwing up, you got to get rid of them. There's no uniform consistency in this TSA, and that is inexcusable in this day and age.
Jonas, it was a little more than a year ago that terrorists attacked the Brussels airport.
Well, look, we've spent hundreds of billions on anti-terror measures, much of it an ongoing basis, which will never go away. You don't just double down on the spending because somebody's casing out an airplane someplace. Look, the bottom line is there's a lot of mistakes made here with this, and spending more is only going to magnify it. If you really step back, the airline TSA stuff is a joke, and it is not. Look, it took over 10 years from 9/11 just to get TSA pre-check off the table. That's an absurd length of time. It still doesn't make any sense. They charge you to do it, so no one wants to do it, and then you don't have that program. If you're on TSA pre-check, they'll check my dog for bombs because I don't know why they do it. They're just holding up the line. There's so much stuff that there's no federal ID. We still use a patchwork of state ID for identification. These are big mistakes that just create the illusion of security, and spending more with that kind of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is our weakness, not the military, and the terrorists know it, and they can bankrupt us by leading to hundreds of billions of dollars of more stupid spending.
But, Emily, we do know that these two men were picked up with ties to Hezbollah, and one was at JFK casing the joint.
Yeah, and to bridge the gap sort of between those two is that we're just inefficiencies. There's bureaucracy, there's red tape in TSA, and what's very interesting about this particular story is that we've sort of been talking about lone wolves attacks for the past couple of years. That does not appear to be the case in this situation. These men were connected to the organized terrorist group Hezbollah, and so if we're having this like large-scale organized attack on airports, that's incredibly alarming. That's something that absolutely demands new security measures.
Jess, you like government spending?
Yes, I do. In this circumstance, I don't, but I will, again, as in the last segment, really like what John said, and I think that the consistency across airports is really key here. I was down at the Atlanta airport a couple weeks ago and was really surprised that I didn't have to take my shoes off. You know, I mean, everything was completely different than it is at JFK, and I do myself have TSA pre-check and agree with Jonas that it's crazy it took that long. We have a ton of money that we're already spending. Use it efficiently, reform the system, make sure also that we're cooperating with tech companies. I go back to this over and over over again. We need to do better in terms of monitoring social media and things like that to know what's going on.
Gary B., I do want to point out that in President Trump's proposed budget, there are actually cuts to, say, these Viper patrol teams. They want to cut the number of these teams that patrol airports from 31 to 8. They want to cut $45 million from grants to state and local authorities that would go toward more patrols at airports.
Well, I don't think it's a money issue, Dig, and I kind of agree with what everyone has said here. You know, before TSA was created, we were spending $750 million a year on airport security. Since then, we've spent $70 billion. The latest budget is almost $8 billion for the TSA. So the cuts you're talking about, probably a drop in the bucket. I guess I come back to what John said, but maybe in a different way. He talked about incentives. Look, this is a government bureaucracy. I think Jonas mentioned that. We need to do away with that. I think you have two options. Either A, you privatize it. You know, John mentioned the failure rate. The latest test TSA, they had a 95% failure rate. Could you imagine if FedEx had a 95% failure rate? So that's one. You privatize it and give them incentives. Or you probably deal with the best branch of government that has the most experience with terrorists, the military. You put the military in charge of TSA. Either way, the TSA cannot do it right now.
Thank you so much, Gary. I want to point out, though, the reason that the airport security was nationalized was 9/11. Thanks, guys. Cashing in just over an hour from now. Eric, what do you guys have coming up?
Good morning, Dagan. As lawmakers obsess over hearings, are they ignoring the issues Americans really want solved? Plus, filmmaker Michael Moore launching a website for whistleblowers to leak information about President Trump. Anyone see a problem with this at all? The Cash In will see you at 11:30.
Thank you, Eric. We'll be watching. But up here first, want to boost jobs? How about slamming the book on regulations? Or the president says you could just do this. President Trump holding up, then tossing away a bunch of regulations during his speech on how to rebuild bridges and roads quicker. He says cutting all the red tape coming out of Washington will help fix our infrastructure across America. Gary B. says he's right.
Exactly. It's the most important thing he can do after tax reform. A couple quick facts, Dagan. The Small Business Administration estimates that government regulations cost businesses $1.75 trillion a year. The Federal Registry, where all these laws is 81,000 pages, 50% more than during Reagan. And finally, Dagan, 10% of American businesses go out of business each year by market forces. How much does government shrink each year? It never does. It grows like barnacles on the Titanic. Trump is right to do what he's doing.
Emily.
Yeah, Donald Trump uses his kind of unique apolitical personality to channel the frustrations of the bipartisan working class. That's what he's doing. This is why he was elected. It may look silly to elitists in the media, but it resonates with the American people. If he's able to focus on this somehow, the Russia investigation will be relegated to the echo chambers of the leftist media.
John.
Last time we had regulation reform was 1996, the Small Business Fairness Act. We've had 21 years of just regulation stacked upon regulation. This is one of the best things you can do for our country.
Jess.
I've heard many rightists, I guess we would say, talking about Russia as well. But to the general point, yeah, we are overregulated, but Donald Trump is being completely inelegant about it, not just in how he held up that binder, this kind of 2-for-1 rule. I'm going to get rid of 2 for every 1 that I create. Shows a complete lack of focus and lack of understanding, actually, for what he's going after. So be sensible about it.
But, Jonas, you need to get rid of these regulations and ease the permitting process if you're going to get people to invest in infrastructure in this country.
It's definitely half the game. Half the spending. These projects aren't going to build themselves because there's no regulations. It's his strongest area. I'd say it's stronger than taxes because he can get Democrat votes in this area without question, even with all his current problems. That said, if you pull away federal regulations, you are leaving a patchwork of even dumber state regulations, things that they don't let electric car like Tesla in your state. That stuff needs federal oversight. Who gets to fly drones? There's a million examples like that.
Thank you, guys. Thanks to everybody. Special thanks to Emily and Jessica. Always great to see you. Ladies, movie star Tom Cruise and pop star Britney Spears in the spotlight this week and shining a light on how you can make celebrity-type money. Next. Predictions. Gary B., go.
Dagan, Comey Schmomy. Look, more people are going to see The Mummy this weekend than even tell you what Comey does for a living. Comcast up 20%. They own Universal, which is a studio behind the movie.
Jonas, you like it?
Leave it wrapped in bandages.
John, your prediction.
Royal Dutch Shell has a 6.7% yield. They have great cost-cutting measures that they put in place. I think it's up 20% in a year.
Gary B., you like it?
John has got to move on from oil. It's yesterday's stock, I'm afraid.
Ooh, Jonas, your prediction.
Look, she's one of the most globally famous women. You either love her or you hate her, but everyone knows who she is. And she was just hacked by the Russians. I'm not talking about Hillary Clinton. I'm talking about Britney Spears. And that's why Pure Funds cybersecurity ETF will be up 15%. Ticker symbol hack, because everyone's getting hacked.
John?
We need an app to tell these idiots not to have nude pictures on their phone. I need an app to understand Jonas, too.
Neil,
You're toxic.
To Comey and the contractor, he admits to leaking details of a private meeting with the president. She is accused of leaking secret intelligence in hopes of, well, bringing down the president. Same president, two very different strategies. But if you think about it, same result. They were both entrusted with looking after us. Now they're spilling the beans to us. But who's to say not on us? And keep in mind, they both worked for us. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and they leaked. You decide if they went too far, and all on your dime. Charles Payne, Charlie Gasparino, Kennedy, along with Ben Stein, glad to see him back, and Adam Lashinsky, kind of glad to see him back. All right, kidding. All right, Charles Payne, to you on this, and these leaks, and they come out, and everything else, and all of a sudden, the common theme is spilling a lot of stuff.
Spilling a lot of stuff. Yeah, they have both created a lot of problems. In fact, let's face it, I think leaks are now right up there, clear and present danger, below the war on terrorism and maybe these bad actors like the North Koreas. And what I find amazing is that both sides of the aisle, though, are not doing much about it. In fact, this week what we heard is that both sides of the aisle love 702, love FISA, and I'm hearing nothing on domestic spying. Someone's got to lessen the amount of people who can do these leaks and monitor this whole thing better. It's a destructive practice.
Kennedy.
No, Charles is absolutely right. It was incredible to see, particularly on Wednesday before the Senate Intelligence Committee, when, the four members of the administration, or at least three, and acting FBI director were extolling the virtues of Section 702. And you wanted to shake them because the president should be the one who comes out most vociferously against this. What actually surprises me is that it's taken this long to have another Snowden-esque leaker from the NSA. And, and we have yet to see if Reality Winner has in fact downloaded documents from the NSA in the past and disseminated them, but she also starts a really important conversation of, is there too much stuff that's classified, and what is whistleblowing? When does the American public deserve to know something?
Another thing, too, is it depends on what they're leaking, right? If it's something that's disparaging.
To me, I want that leak. Listen here. We're a journalism organization. I think the last thing we should be doing is attacking people giving us information. I think there was something good that was done by leaking the Pentagon Papers. I'm sorry. It was good. The Vietnam War sucked. That was good. That told the public something. To be honest with you, this stuff with Comey isn't so bad. I mean, the fact that he's the most sanctimonious goody two-shoes guy, tries to come across as Mr. Goody Two-Shoes when he's really this shark political operator. I mean, he's a
well, I know you as a journalist would be happy to be a sponge and get all this information, but do you find it odd? Do you find it odd that the information that gets picked apart here isn't necessarily the stuff that leaks badly for Donald Trump, but the other stuff?
Well, I think this. As a journalist, I'm covering the Trump administration. I want people to leak to me. I think I'm fair enough to know where to draw the line. Like, I wouldn't have written the story about the Russian dossier and the alleged...
No, but you don't get what I'm saying. Leaks on Hillary Clinton ignored. Leaks on him, not so much.
Neil, there was plenty of coverage of the Clinton email scandal from leaks. I mean, I've written...
But no, you're not hearing it. I'm just saying... We worried then, and Democrats raised then about where these leaks coming from.
Right.
Now that's not a concern at all in the case of what's going
Democrats don't care. The Republicans care now because it's about
it's
Republican.
It took me forever for you to get to the point.
But Neil, it's just simple politics. I just don't want you and my colleagues here to attack leakers because we'll never get another friggin' story.
Leaks are dangerous.
No, they're not.
We can't put our own self-interest ahead of that.
No, I disagree. It depends. You're right about that. But it depends on. Listen, I don't think we should be reporting about troop movements before the battle, and most journalism organizations don't do that.
But I don't know. Believe me, you wonder if certain newspapers, if they were out at the time, the day before the Normandy invasion.
No way.
All right, fine. All right, Adam, what do you think?
Well, there's a huge difference between the Snowden-like leaks and the Comey leaks. They're just completely different things. The Comey didn't put any intelligence officials in danger, any troops in danger, anything in danger, and nothing about policy either. He was playing these sharp-elbowed political games, as,
so you can
as Charlie
delineate
says.
which is you know, okay to leak.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that if you want to have a conversation about prosecuting people, then yes, we would have that. We would have that conversation.
All right, Ben Stein.
Look, there's a bottom line here, Neil, which is Trump didn't do anything wrong. They can make up all the leaks they want. They can sensationalize it all they want. But Trump didn't do anything wrong. He did not order Comey to stop the investigation. He did not order anybody to stop the investigation. The bottom line is that these leaks are all BS. Not Ben Stein, but BS. These leaks are all BS.
Let's talk about this 25-year-old woman who was getting a lot of stuff and because she was not a fan of Donald Trump's, and getting anything and everything she could on it. Now, then, do you delineate? Do you separate?
Yeah. You can't say. I mean, this woman has it's evidence she wanted to join the Taliban. I mean, and by the way, she was out in the open. I mean, anyone who was around her knew that there was something wrong, or you could tell. She wasn't hiding her animosity and, in fact, deep-seated hatred for Donald Trump. So,
don't too many people like Snowden have security clearances?
Well, yeah, I mean, but here's the difference is nowadays the NSA knows what to look for. And the second that document went live on The Intercept,
but
they
she was sloppy, though. She was
She was very sloppy. She was young. She was idealistic. But you also have to look at the intent. And there are people, if you take a step back for a second and you take reality winner out of it and what her political motivation might have been, there are people who say that's actually information that we deserve to know. Why is it classified? We should know that the Russians were tinkering, you know, through spearfishing with
and be real.
So the end justifies.
But be real clear here. She did not put anybody in jeopardy. And it's one thing if she uncovered or unmasked.
So where do you
as
separate?
As a journalist, we do that. The Pentagon Papers were great. They didn't unmask anybody. What they did was just show that we conducted this ridiculous secret war. And I'm telling you, for a journalism organization to sit here and attack leakers, that's insane.
The reason she was denied bail is because maybe she didn't put anyone in jeopardy yet, but you don't know what her ultimate intent was and what she could have done.
Also, she might have taken stuff in
Let's bring Ben Stein in here. Go ahead, Ben.
Gaspar, with the greatest possible respect, you are conflating, as the left-wingers say, two entirely different things. Yes, there's one thing about leaking data about war, and I agree. The Pentagon Papers were a good thing, and by the way, they deflated the Democrats, not the Republicans. But these people are leaking now, are making it seem as if they are deflating something important, and in fact, they're just deflating the most commonplace kind of office gossip. Nothing happened.
Yeah, but
nothing
listen, but here's where you're missing it, Ben. The bottom line is this: what we're getting from these leaks is information about the process of government. I think Comey is a grandstanding, good. He tries to come across as Mr. Goody Two Shoes,
which is beside the point.
But here's the thing: I thought it was fascinating. This is how the president he described how the president of the United States acts when it comes to its investigation. That is information
which
the public knows,
totally
which may not be illegal. I agree with you, but it's information I like to know, and most Americans need to know.
Why did James Comey feel that it was up to him, that he had the moral responsibility to start the avalanche that is special counsel? Why did he feel that that was his job?
Why not?
And I actually agree with Adam Schiff.
Why not?
At this point, because he was the FBI director who was fired. He did not work for the Department of Justice.
Trump comes out,
the same reasons that he used on July 5th.
Why do you agree with Adam Schiff, the ranking member on that House?
Because Adam Schiff said that there were mechanisms and there were avenues for him. If he really thought that those conversations were so egregious, he could have started a congressional investigation, a special investigation in Congress, and notified the appropriate people instead of cowardly having
Why
his
is it
friend.
coward? I mean, listen, I think it's stupid what he did, but it's not coward.
He has a different role because as the head of the FBI, he is the one who's supposed to equally and fairly apply the law.
He was a private citizen, and when Trump allegedly defamed him, as he said that the whole agency's against him, which is not true, by the way, that he didn't do a good job. He came out and fought fire with fire.
All right, well, Adam, the only thing I notice in this battle over this is that we pick and choose which leaks are good or bad, and the many Democrats who, for example, wanted to know the source of these leaks that were bringing down Hillary Clinton were not at all concerned after the fact when they were concerning Donald Trump. It didn't matter where they came from. So all I'm saying is there's no consistency on this issue. What do you say?
Well, I say that our country is great because we're having this conversation, and we encourage.
I know our country. I know our country's great. I agree with you on that one.
No, we don't know.
He's so patriotic.
There's a lot of doubt about that these days, Neil.
Come to think of it. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here. When we do, forget the whole collusion commotion for a second. Wait till you really see the real tweet storm after this.
Today on Forbes on Fox, forget what former FBI Director Comey is saying about President Trump. Someone at Forbes says what GOP leaders are saying about tax cuts is the real worry. They'll explain. And Amazon offering a service to Americans on food stamps that has some here saying we need to cut food stamps. We'll see at the top of the hour.
And a Fox News alert this Saturday morning. Good morning. I'm Leland Vittert. Protests right now heating up across the country. Here's a live look at what's going on in New York right now. The controversial group Act for America is holding demonstrations in 30 cities, speaking out against what they call human rights violations committed under Islamic law known as Sharia law. Critics say those demonstrations are just anti-Muslim and are holding counter-protests. Live pictures coming in. We're going to keep an eye on this throughout the day. Back to you as news breaks. 2 U.S. soldiers have been killed in Afghanistan in what authorities are calling an insider attack. It happened in the Anshan district of the Nangarhar province. 2 other U.S. service members were injured when an Afghan soldier opened fire. Back to those protests as news warrants. I'm Leland Vittert in Washington. Now back to Cavuto on business.
All right, now, if the president wants his agenda to get moving, stop tweeting. Well, I preferred more like start focusing. Charlie Gasparino, what do you think of that?
You know, as a journalist, again, I'm going to speak my book. I like his tweets because it's a constant fodder for more news stories. He keeps, you know, adding confusion, and journalists love confusion and disarray. And
there, I disagree with you.
And yes, we do. Come on, you report about all sorts of corporate intrigue, and you love it. We all love that sort of stuff. You're so full of it, Adam.
Stop.
Apple. When all sorts of stuff happens at Apple, you're all over it. Okay, you know it. I know. We love it. We go nuts on this stuff. As journalists, we love this. But as an American,
It goes too far.
As an American, you know, listen, he's delaying his agenda. His agenda is.
Well, that's my point. That every time you do that, first of all, I don't think it's the wisest strategy to take in the middle of this terror attack, the latest one in England, and you're tweeting awful things about the London mayor. It's off topic. It's punching down. I don't know where to go with that. And if your agenda is important and it's a solid agenda, you can argue the specifics. It's getting you off book.
It is, absolutely, and it's creating more headache than it's worth. I agree with Charlie that if the president actually got off Twitter, journalists would implode. They would have no stories to follow. They would have to do real journalism, and that is so far out. Yes, they would need depends for all the leaks. But having said that, I actually think the president employed a very different strategy after the hearing. He was off Twitter for 2 days. He let his lawyer come out, and then Friday morning, that's when he unleashed a little bit. That's what people were waiting for, and it allowed Comey to be the main story. And I think
you could argue he still kept it within the subject and the passion of the moment. Now, Adam, where do you distinguish on this tweet thing? We all like a president who goes over us, and it's great stuff. And I heard someone at CNN, you know, who normally, you know, rips the president and loves the fact that it just provides constant fodder. But he was very condescending about it. But what do you think?
Well, I think it's great entertainment, sure, but I'm far less interested in this journalistically than I am, you know, as an American.
Oh, you're so full of it.
No, I don't. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I think if we had a survey about who was more full of it, Charlie, I'm confident.
No, guys, please.
Sorry.
Finish that.
Sorry.
I think real journalists are more than happy to focus on the president's economic policies and would be happy to write about them. He's doing himself a disservice, the country a disservice. You said it perfectly, Neil.
I did. I did. Of course I did. All right, Ben Stein, what do you think about this whole back and forth on tweets and all? It is what it is, and it got the president to the Oval Office. I just think that he used this tool wisely. That's all.
I think he's used it brilliantly. I mean, here we have the three gigantic major super networks against him. He, with a few strokes of a keyboard, can overcome them and control the media and dominate the media. I think he's a genius in understanding the new media. And these Trump's Twitters take maybe 5 or 6 minutes of the day. He's got lots of time left to work on his program, but I would love to see him take some of that time to fill the vacant spots in the government. Of the 650 or so top spots in the government, something like 550 are still unfilled. He's got to bear down on that. He's got to realize being president is not a part-time job.
Every tweet is getting him sidetracked. Every tweet is getting sidetracked. Charles Payne, that's one of my only argument is, you know, when you're president of the United States, he has 30+ million followers, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you are tweeting on a subject that's going to cause this whole new storm like he did when he went after the London mayor. If you want that's fine, but it's getting away from some of the other stuff that you're pushing as well.
If you can stop the midnight to 7 a.m. tweets, I think we're A-OK.
Yeah. And that will happen.
That's where, man, to your point, Kennedy, this week when he didn't tweet, it put more pressure on Republicans to get stuff done. And what did they do? We got Dodd-Frank stuff done. We saw financials move.
In other words, use this weapon to your advantage.
Right. Covfefe. What did he mean by Covfefe?
Exactly.
You know what he meant? Cavuto.
Okay, but listen to this.
Right.
Hey, Adam, he one-upped you on that one.
The great equalizer is moving into the White House this coming Wednesday. That's Melania. And I think that she will provide the necessary barrier between him and social media as only your wife can.
Covfefe, Cavuto.
That's fine. All right. Now, remember when Britain's prime minister said that enough is enough with terror? Remember that? Well, I think voters responded by saying, you know what, enough is enough with you. And after this.